Yep. Hello again, everybody. For the purposes of this video demo, we're going to talk about an overview of the Azure Portal. In the previous video, we created an account to be able to sign in. In this video, I'm going to use my pre-existing, my Yahoo account, my personal account, to sign in, and I want to give you a test drive to kick the tires, so to speak, of what the Azure Portal can do, what it looks like. So I'm going to go to portal.azure.com. Okay, you can see I'm already signed in here. If your account doesn't appear in the list, you can choose another account here. I'm going to choose this one. Okay. Now, your screen is going to look different, much different than my screen does. The services that you see listed here are probably going to be different. The recent resources will definitely be different. The vertical menu bar down the left side has the potential to be different, but generally it all looks the same. You can pin items that you use frequently under your favorites, which is where the differences would come from. But mostly by default, you'll see here on the left side of your screen exactly what I see here in my screen. Okay, so first things first. Okay, I can search for resources here. Okay, now we'll spend a lot of time in here, but let's say, for example, that I want to create a virtual machine. You can begin typing the name of the Azure resource you want to create, and here are your choices. Okay, now I type virtual and M here, but you can see virtual networks up here. It tries to the best of its ability to guess what it is you're trying to create. See, even backup vaults and backup center are listed here, and backup vaults are required in order to back up virtual machines, which I guess would be Azure's justification for including them here. But you just choose virtual machine, and you're taken to that resource. Okay, so that's the search field. Up here in the top right, I have a number of buttons. Here's the Azure Command Line Interface, or Azure CLI as it's called. Now, if I don't have a storage account mounted, I'm going to get an error message right here that says no storage mounted. I do have a pre-existing storage account that I created some time ago in order to store the results of the commands that I type at this prompt. Okay, so now it's authenticating me, it's building. Okay, and then once I'm signed in, now we're not going to spend any time doing any of these things here. Okay, there are commands that you can type. Now, obviously, the AZ command is expecting some additional commands here. I'll call them commandlets, although that's technically not the right name. Okay, but I can use the command line interface, or CLI, to get information about my subscription, to create most resources, to make modifications. I can upload my own custom JSON files here, JSON files, the JavaScript object notation files for various things. So we'll spend some time in here as well. But this is the Azure Command Line Interface. Okay, if you're more of a Linux user, right, you can switch from PowerShell to Bash. Okay, and we'll wait a second for it to appear. And now most of your Linux commands will also work in here. Okay, I'm going to close that for the time being. Okay, I've got this button here for Directories and Subscriptions. Now I've got two subscriptions. Long story short, I have excuse me, my personal Yahoo subscription that I started when I worked at a previous employer, managed services provider down in Kutztown. That's my default directory. I have a second subscription as a Microsoft employee and a Microsoft certified trainer. I get access to this Microsoft Developer Network platform subscription. I get $100 per month free of resources. So I can create virtual machines and public IP addresses and all manner of Azure resources. And as long as I don't spend more than $100 a month, my credit card doesn't get billed. Okay, so probably arguably the greatest benefit of becoming a Microsoft certified trainer is this platform's subscription. Right, I can change my theme. I can change whether the menu is docked, or I can grab this vertical menu and move it. I can change to high contrast, okay, etc. So I'm going to discard those changes. I've got a notification bell up here that tells me, in this case, how much credit I have remaining. Right? I haven't dismissed it, so it's still here. What you'll see, excuse me, when we get to the point where we're creating Azure resources, you'll see that there's a circle around the bell that moves in a clockwise motion when you're deploying resources. The notification window here will tell you the virtual machine is deploying as opposed to being deployed. Okay. Once the resource is deployed, the spinning circle will stop. The bell will have a little circle in the bottom right corner with a number in it. Then that number indicates how many unread notifications you have. Okay. My settings, okay, my default subscription filter is all right. We were just here. Okay. If I want to contact Microsoft for any reason, okay, I can get help and support. Now, I don't have an enterprise agreement with Microsoft, so I may not get a quick response. For me, it's quicker if I ask the community, because then, excuse me, my query will go out to other Azure admins, and I will most certainly get a faster response. I can read the Azure documentation myself if I want. Okay? There is no shortage of Azure documentation. Okay? Probably millions of pages of Azure documentation. Okay? And lastly, feedback. Right? Am I happy? Am I unhappy? If I'm happy, why? If I'm unhappy, why? I can choose the option to let Microsoft email me about my feedback. Right? So be careful what you type in here. Right? You don't want to curse somebody out and then have Microsoft, because of course they're going to be able to read your name and your subscription ID, etc. If I go back to the home page, and there are a couple of ways I can do this. I can click home here in the center. I can click home here in the vertical menu, and you can see the page didn't change when I clicked home. The home page is the home page. I can navigate to frequently used resources. Yes, I can create my own dashboard. We'll talk about that in a later lesson. Here I can look at all of the services Azure has to offer, divvied up by categories. This is called the Azure Marketplace. I can search for featured items such as AAD or Azure Active Directory. I can look up things like cost management. If you're brand new to Azure, how much is this going to cost me? Okay. This particular applet here is for training, okay, on configuring costs. Okay. But I can click on any one of these categories and be taken to, okay, so that's kind of the long way around, right, to creating a virtual machine. If you actually wanted to create a virtual machine, you would do what I showed you earlier, which is click the search bar and start typing it in. If you want to take a look at all of the resources in your current subscription, use all resources. We're going to delve into each and every one of these things, some in much more detail than others. We're going to spend a lot of time in the lab environment having you create some of these resources. Okay, just quick and easy, right? If I go to resource groups, you can see all the resource groups I have created. You can see which subscription they're linked to. Most of you will have one subscription. When you work in an enterprise level environment, though, you might have 100 subscriptions, right? That's no joke. That's no exaggeration. Okay. A resource group is a logical container. Now, container in this context means something different than if you are a web developer, you're familiar with the concepts of containerized applications. In this context, when I say container, I'm talking about a logical grouping of resources. So it's different than the container which holds your web-based applications. I can create a resource group as easily as clicking the plus sign. I'll use my MSDN. I'm going to give it a name. I am a fan of, if I'm demoing something, some derivative of the word delete me, so that I know a week from now when I come back in here, oh, that's right, this is something I demoed. There's no question that I can safely delete it. And this is the last thing I want to point out before we go. If you are using a pay-as-you-go account, so you registered for an Azure account, you linked a credit card to that account, resources you create mostly will cost money. Some of them will cost money even when they're not actively being used. Things like a public IP address. You're going to be billed for that even if your VMs, your load balancers, etc. are not currently running, because Microsoft saves that public IP address for you, meaning they can't allocate it to another customer. You want to be very careful about creating resources and then not deleting them when your lab time is done. That's the big part of the reason why I like naming my demo resource groups in this manner. When I'm finished, I can delete the resource group. And because the resource group is a container, it's going to delete all of the things inside that container, right? So a minute ago, I talked about the notification icon here, right? So I pick my subscription, I pick the name, and I pick my region. We'll talk about regions later. I want to review and create. Validation is passed. Let's create. Now watch the bell. Okay. Now that was really quick. Some resources, like a VM, can take 5 minutes to spin up. Networking components, some of them can take a literal 45 minutes to spin up. During that time, that circle is spinning the whole time. Okay. And now you can see I have a new resource group called You Can Delete Me. Okay, so I hope you found this video helpful, and we'll talk again in the next.